Okay, there we go. All right. Well, welcome everyone. It is such a joy to be here with you all, new faces, old faces, and everything in between. Um, I'm going to go ahead and jump in now, but before I do that, I wanted to just note that I have Lyra from my team here who's going to be helping to just moderate. So she'll be minding the chat and alerting me in case I miss any questions. She'll also be sharing links and resources as we move through today's masterclass and rest workshop. So just wanted to take a moment to introduce her and thank her for her support and time today here. All right. And so just once more for folks who are just joining, take a moment to grab the materials that you'll need for today, namely a glass of water, something to write on, something to write with, and any grounding tools that help you feel safe, comfortable, and pleasurable in your space. Throughout the session today, you are welcome to use the chat function for reactions, to connect with each other, to share any thoughts. And you're also welcome to use the raise hand function if you have questions that come up. I am going to plan to have space for questions towards the end. And so if you feel like it's maybe a longer one or doesn't directly connect to what we're talking to, I'd invite you to save it till the end so that we can get through the material together. All right. And with that said, I'll go ahead and get started with just a brief introduction to me, Collective Rest, and what it is that we're doing here today. So for those who haven't had a chance to meet me yet, my name is Cassandra Lam. I use she, her pronouns, and I identify as a Vietnamese American somatic healing facilitator, guiding tired and trauma-impacted organizations and communities to rest. My whole framework is really rooted in feeling safe enough to rest, and we're going to dive really deeply into that today. And just to define somatics really quickly, that's just a really fancy word for anything that connects to and relates to the connections between your mind, body, and spirit. And some of the identities I hold and bring into this rest work include being neurodivergent, a daughter of refugees, Vietnamese boat people. I am a survivor of domestic violence, living with complex PTSD, chronic pain, and invisible disabilities as a result. I've also been diagnosed with autism in the past year. So just wanting to share these identities up front because I want you to know that I don't come from a background or have a body that easily and readily makes its way to rest. And so I really come from a place that's informed by these identities. And all of it has made me super, super passionate about creating life and rest affirming spaces where community care, healing, and liberation can be practiced as culture, or practiced until it becomes our collective culture. All of this work is housed under Collective Rest, which is both my quote unquote brand, as well as a specific guided relaxation practice that many of you in here have experienced already through our community rest sessions. But all of this really began in March 2021 as my response to our collective exhaustion, grief, and suffering. And honestly, I created it because I also absolutely freaking needed rest affirming community around me. And so I also want to thank you all for being here. This community, the people I get to connect with in this work, emboldens me to keep going because we do live in a rest hostile world. So know that today I am, yes, showing up as a teacher, a guide, a space holder, but I am also equally a peer, a comrade, a collaborator, an ally of yours, a partner, if you will, on the rest journey myself. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't name some of my lineage here on the screen, but perhaps most importantly, especially to today's session, I would not be here doing this work without the work of Trisha Hersey and the NAP ministry. So just wanted to take a moment to really connect to that lineage. I highly recommend all of us check out their Instagram page and all the resources that Trisha has created to just support this ongoing journey of learning how to rest. All right. And so I want to start off this session with a little bit of context before we jump into the meat of the experience. And today is really going to be very experiential, participatory, because it's important for me that you don't leave regurgitating things that I said, but having had your own experiences with the things that I might have said. That to me is the most important thing, because that is the most valuable and impactful thing for your life and your rest journey. And so let's start with setting the stage, if you will, here. Like, why are we gathering to learn how to rest? I want to start off with the obvious truth that is no longer obvious to most of us. You have an irrevocable relationship to rest. You always have, you always will. Because your need for rest, our need for rest, is a biological imperative. We were born for this. We were born to do this, which is why babies and puppies know how to rest and sleep and do all the things. So essentially, as a biological imperative means that we're designed to need and to do certain things, which includes eating food, drinking water, eliminating waste, sleeping, resting, and connecting with others, right? Humans are social creatures. So when you have millions of us, and that number is actually smaller than what the real number might be, because I'm pulling this from sleep statistics from the Institute of Sleep, but they are very much focused on only North America. But just using that number, for example, when millions of us are struggling to rest and sleep and slow down as we were naturally designed to, the question isn't, why are we so bad at rest? It should actually be, what conditions have made it unsafe for us to rest, for us to slow down, for us to care for ourselves? And so what we're doing here and why we're gathering here today is to remember, reclaim, and start to embody this truth, which really is the foundation for the framework that I'll be sharing with you later in today's session. And so as a way to just start to set up our time together and offer you some guidance on how to get the most out of your experience, as an overview of our journey, we'll be starting off with a somatic practice shortly, and then we'll be exploring what came up in that practice through a couple of creative reflection exercises that are designed so that you'll walk away with a literal artifact that reveals your current rest story and what you might need to feel safe enough to slow down and rewrite it. And then after we have these experiences, after you have experiences with your own relationship to rest, is when we'll start to dive into that framework that can help you to rewrite your rest story in your life. We'll close out with some time for Q&A, and then towards the end, I'll also make an invitation to join Rewriting Our Rest Stories. If you identify as a tired Asian woman or femme, that's just my group program where we take this framework and go deep together. And that information will come at the end. And so right now, at the start of our time together, 3 things I would like to invite you to keep in mind, almost like a compass, if you will, for how you might spend our time together today. Things to keep in mind, things to be aware of. First and foremost, do not believe what I say. I want you to, and I encourage you to believe what you can experience for yourself, because that is your truth. And I'm not going to take any offense. And when I say don't believe what I say, what I mean is, like, go off and have your own experience, have your own wisdom, have your own knowledge, have your own almost like investment in these concepts, ideas, and frameworks, because you do have it. I'm just one of many vessels that this message is coming through. 2, be mindful of the impulse to outsource your agency, defer to experts, or seek knowledge about your rest journey outside of yourself. You were born with 3 innate intelligences, aka ways of knowing. That's namely the mind with the intellect, the body with its ability to feel and sense, and the spirit, which you might call your higher self, your inner child, your, your favorite self, something like that, maybe even your soul. But you were born with these 3 forms of intelligence, and we were designed to make decisions and live from all 3, to be able to be informed by all they have to share. And so what we're trying to do here with rest is to create space for those 3 to reconnect. You already have more than enough within your body, your spirit, your mind, and your lived experience to begin the rest journey. And today's practices will help you start to do some of that work. And thirdly, lead with and reflect upon your lived experiences. This will help you to understand your current subconscious relationship with rest. And in that understanding, it will reveal what it is that you uniquely need to feel safe enough to slow down. Okay. And so with that said, I'm going to be moving into an invocation now, where I'll be reading a piece by Ursa Daly Ward called Body as the Very Present. And for this invocation, I invite you to come into a comfortable seat. Consider perhaps closing your eyes if that would feel comfortable. When we remove one of the senses, the other senses get heightened. And as you listen, imagine that your body's a pond and that these words are like pebbles skipping across the surface. Maybe some will ripple out into other connections or threads you've been thinking about. Maybe some will hit you really deeply, and maybe some won't hit at all. And so just allowing yourself to have this experience of receiving these words. Body as the Very Present by Ursa Daly Ward. Did you know that you can study the body by taking the time, by making notes? Do you know you can begin to regulate? Do you know that no one knows your body more? So with all of this in mind, imagine if you paid attention. This is a lifetime of learning. Imagine you knew how best to nourish your mind, the place where your future is made. Imagine you gave your body more of the things that it needs to flourish. Imagine you knew more about what to keep and what to let go of. This is a lifetime of learning. Imagine you started to notice and really learn your body, the way that we learn the things that we love. What if you changed some of your questioning? Not what do I think about this, but what do I feel? Not what must I do about this, but where might I begin to find myself? What are the sensations happening in your body? In what situations do they come about? Where is the truth showing up over and over and over again? When do you recede? And where do you contract? When do you expand and make the most of yourself? Not why, but where does it hurt? Furthermore, what do you continue to put in your body that continues to harm your body? How much can a body take? How are you masking the truth of your body over and over and over again? How are you blocking your messages? Could you be more of a friend to yourself? When the feeling comes, when the discomfort is there, how does it feel to sit inside it? Where is the thing that hurts? Before we know why, we have to locate it. Before we begin to look for the solution, fix, release, we have to locate it. Where was the pattern formed? Where does the pattern begin? What are you repeating over and over and over again? Where is the disconnect? What is this tightening, this stitch, this ache? This will not go away, this breathlessness, this stiffening. Where is the thing, and how might you begin to channel it elsewhere. The difference between anxiety and excitement is you. Your perception, your projections, your distrust, you. You need new things. We need new tools, new ways of working it through. We need new pathways from our memories to here. We need new systems, new responses to the things that were and are no more. The first thing to do is feel. And as you take your next breath, I invite you to notice in your body the ripples that these words created. I invite you to connect with the feeling in your heart or your throat or your belly. I invite you to feel these things that might have been buried under layers of exhaustion and overworking and surviving and fighting and trying to make it to the next day with more of us intact. And as you take a slow inhale through your nose, perhaps imagining that that in-breath can carry the wisdom that you were able to pull from this reading into your lungs. And that on the out-breath, you can send out any parts of you that are ready to be released to create space for a new rest story to take hold. And gently, as you are ready and able, opening your eyes and meeting us back here. And know throughout this session, by the way, that everything I offer is an invitation. You are welcome to move freely around your space, to look away, do anything at all that supports you and your experience. There will be a recording, and so if you find at some point you need to do something else or to take rest, know that that's absolutely okay too. And so it is with these tender words by Ursa Daily Ward that we will begin to move into our experience together today. We're going to start by getting into the rest stories in our bodies. We'll be starting with these practices, and I invite you to just think about having an experience first, and then we'll circle back later to place them, to locate them within the framework. And so there are two practices that I'm going to be guiding you through now. The first of these practices is called the somatic check-in. This is a practice that is designed to help you create a daily practice of pausing to check in, noticing what your body might be needing, making an attempt to meet that need, and then seeing what happens on the other side. Oftentimes when I work with people or I talk to people on the rest journey, one of the number one blocks that they come across is, okay, well, I set aside time to rest, but what do I do? And so these practices, along with everything in the framework, are really designed to fill that gap. Okay, I want to rest, but what do I do? And so this is something that you can start implementing literally tomorrow. If you're like, hey, I want to set 30 minutes aside for rest, but I'm not really sure what I want to do, and I feel anxious or feel any mix of feelings, you can drop into this practice that I'll be guiding us through right now. So again, the intention here is a simple and structured way to make a daily practice of checking in, noticing what you need, meeting that need, and tracking how it affected you. Over time, These logs, these entries, will reveal themes, trends, and previously unconscious experiences. The practice can be as short as 5 minutes. There is a before and an after component, so it might be 5 minutes for the before log, 5 minutes for after, and you're doing something restful to take care of your needs in between. And a good place to start is just making time to do it once a day. And so how this practice works is essentially you'll be setting up on your piece of paper the somatic check-in, which will look like this, but let me go over the core pieces of the check-in itself. So it has 3 parts. It's like an SSS, triple S acronym. Scale, which is for rating how you feel on a scale of 1 being very relaxed and 10 very stressed. Set, which is an acronym for sensations, emotions, and thoughts. At the point in time when you're doing this check-in, just listing at least 1 for each. Bonus points if you have access to more, but just 1 for each is also enough. And setting. What is the context surrounding you at this moment when you're choosing to pause? And so just to walk you through an example of what this looks like, on your piece of paper, I invite you to draw a line down the center and a line horizontally across, just to create these 2 columns. The column on the left will represent before. So this is the column that you will fill out when you first are taking a break, taking a pause. And then based on what your before somatic check-in entry reveals, that will give you information about what you might want or need to do to tend to what's happening inside of you. And then after you do that action, hopefully it's something restful or restorative, then you will complete the after portion of the somatic check-in, which will allow you to compare and contrast side by side the impacts of what you chose to do. So as you can see here on the top, I have before and after, and then you will list down the date and time when you do your practice. This example is one that I created from last week. And so we're going to start off this practice now by just set up your paper like this, leave the after side empty, and we'll take the next 5 minutes as a group to just fill out the before side. So scale, sensation, emotion, thought, and setting. And I'll play a song as we do that. As Lyra drops into the chat some resources. 2 of the resources for this exercise include the emotion wheel, which can just help give language to emotions in case you might want some inspiration. And the second resource is a body sensation list, which will help you put some language to the sensations you might be feeling right now. I'll be sending out these resources along with the replay tomorrow, so don't sweat it if you forget to keep them open today.
inside yourself. This girl is tired of looking everywhere. Wanna love myself. Gonna speak kind words. No, I'm doing my best. Gonna speak loving words. I am meant to protect. Lift yourself higher. 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 Where there is fear, lift yourself higher. May there be joy. Lift yourself higher. Where there is fear, lift yourself higher. May there be joy. Higher, higher, higher. Lift yourself higher.
We'll have about 2 more minutes for the before part of this entry.
All you need is all you need is all you need is all you step into the moment. Let yourself free now. All you need is loving to find your way. All you need is a little bit of love inside of you. Carry it like a light, I say. And this love will carry you through. All you need is love, 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 love. All you need is love, love, love. All you need is love.
All right. Hopefully that was enough time for you to just get at least a couple of things down. Again, I will be sending out the replay as well as some of these resources. So know that you'll have plenty more time to continue to sit with these practices. Honestly, if I gave each of the practices we're doing the full amount of time I wanted to, we would be here for 3 hours. And I think it's hard to be on Zoom for 3 hours. So do your best. And that goes with all the practices today. Trust that whatever comes out right now is perfect and enough. And know that you'll have more time to dive deeper on your own afterwards. But so now that you have completed the before section of the somatic check-in, we're now going to be moving into our somatic meditation that will help to reveal the rest story within. But before we do that practice, I'm going to invite you to set up a piece of paper, a separate one, that looks like this diagram, this table I have here on the screen. Excuse me. And so this somatic meditation, which will incorporate both the meditation as well as the times where you're filling out this worksheet, will take about 15 minutes altogether. And the intention of this exercise is to reveal the subconscious rest story that you've been living out. You can think of this practice as your mind, aka your consciousness, having a conversation with your body, which is a mirror or always an expression of what's really happening inside, some of which will be subconscious to you. And so take the next minute to copy over this diagram on your page. And then I'll go over the practice once you've had a chance to do so. So feel free to continue to write. I'm just going to provide an overview of how this practice will work. so that we can stay on schedule. So this somatic meditation is a practice that you can complete seated or lying down if you prefer. It's really up to you. And overall, the practice will involve me saying a rest-related statement aloud as you notice how your body responds to it. So you've already had an experience with this when I was reading the invocation, but we're going to now be doing this very much directly related to your subconscious rest story. And so as I'm reading these rest statements and you're noticing how your body responds to it, I'm going to invite you to be like a scientist who's out in the field doing research and reporting back what they find. So trying your very best to remain compassionate, almost like witness consciousness, essentially like you're a fly on the wall looking at yourself, trying to depersonalize and not make anything mean anything yet. Again, just trying to observe. And you'll be jotting down what you find on a paper, and we'll be going through it like this. I'm reading a rest statement aloud. You're noticing how your body feels. You're pausing to jot it down on your paper under the correct column, whether that's a sensation, an emotion, or a thought that comes up. And a quick note about thoughts. Sometimes you will have an immediate thought and reaction to the statement. Sometimes it's more about the quality of your thoughts, how they shapeshift or change as a result of the statement. And so before we begin, I'm just curious if we have any questions. Does anything feel confusing? Okay. All right. And so one last thing I'll note as we start to move into this practice, some areas that you can pay attention to in order to track how your body's responding include the eyebrows, the jaw, the throat, your breath, whether it's shallower or deeper, your heartbeat, noticing if it increased or decreased, your chest, did it get tight? Did it constrict? Your belly, hands, hips, and feet. These are parts of the body that are very telling. They will reveal almost immediately how you really feel about something. Yes, Melina, why are there two neutral categories? I am not going to tell you yet, but because they're a little bit different. I'm actually going to reveal it to you after we do the practice. But one thing I will say for now is we want to start off with something that's more neutral so that you can really feel what your baseline is that you're coming into this practice with. And then I'll be saying a positively charged statement about rest. And then I'll also be saying a negatively charged statement about rest. And then we'll come back to neutral again so that you can see how that sort of journey, what journey it takes you on and how it all compares to the neutral statements. Oh, Kimmy, you don't have to write the statement I share during the practice. I'll actually be giving them to you on the screen afterwards. So for the practice, I just want you to focus on filling out the physical sensations, emotions, and thoughts in response to the statement. And then I'll give you the statements afterwards. That way you can just really focus on your experience. All right, great questions, everyone. Thank you. All right, and so once you feel ready, you may wish to practice with video off or video on. It's really up to your preference. But I invite you to just find a comfortable resting posture. If you're choosing to sit, ideally it's one where the soles of your feet are touching the ground and your sitting bones are really rooted into that chair. And your spine gets to remain tall and erect. Ideally, there's a stacking of the head and the shoulders over the hips. And for those who are choosing to lie down, noticing if you might want a pillow under the knees for some extra back support, noticing if there's anything that could help your body just start to settle and put the weight into the support beneath you. And then if it would feel safe for you, inviting the eyes to close. And as they do so, just noticing how this small act begins to indicate a transition from relating to the outside world to relating to your inner world. And as you just begin to scan the body from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes, notice if there are any areas that are constricted or tight, any areas where you might still be holding or clenching, and see if you can invite them to soften using your attention and intention. And as you do so, perhaps you're releasing those shoulder blades down the upper back. Perhaps you are releasing the tongue from the roof of the mouth. Perhaps you are softening your belly, letting the fingers and toes be limp, and inviting the skin of your body to gently drape on the frame of your skeleton. And we'll start this practice by calling in some resourcing. So take a moment to think about someone or something or some place that makes you feel safe and supported. And using your mind's eye to connect with this resource, inviting them to be here with you as we engage in this practice, inviting them to help you hold whatever may arise with grace and compassion. And we'll take 3 rounds of breath with our resource. So as you inhale, visualize yourself breathing in the qualities or characteristics of this resource that you wish to embody. And as you breathe out, send out any stagnant air, anything that's stagnant in you, out and give it over to the resource. Allow them to help you recycle or compost it as you create space for the next breath. And we'll do that twice more. Breathing in, you're getting full on the qualities you wish to embody. Breathing out, you're shedding, releasing what no longer serves, allowing yourself to be supported and holding it. And one more time, just like that, perhaps allowing this to be your most expansive breath yet. And then on this exhale, open the mouth, let out a sigh, a sound, some sort of vocalization that helps you just to release a little bit more. And at the bottom of that exhale, pause for a moment and check back in with your inner world as it is right now. There's no need to fix or change any part of your experience. I invite you to just get to know how you are right now. You may wish to assign a weather pattern or a color, or maybe it's enough to just notice where you are right now. And what we're doing here, as you're pausing and noticing, is making a mental note of this as your baseline. Making a mental note of how you are showing up right now, so that as we begin to move into the statements, you can notice the response, any changes in your experience relative to this baseline. And so we'll now begin to move into the statements and we'll move through them one by one. I'll guide you to listen to the statement, notice how the body responds, and then I'll invite you to pause, open your eyes, and jot a couple things down before you'll come back to your eyes closed, noticing your internal world, position, or posture. We'll start with a neutral statement. I am open to rewriting a rest story that works for me. I am open to rewriting a rest story that works for me. As these words land on your body and your consciousness, notice the response, which will come in the form of a physical sensation, an emotion, a thought pattern, or maybe as an impulse to either move closer to or further away from the statement. And now open your eyes and jot down in this next minute what you discovered, how your body responded. I invite you to write in bullet points, shorthand, something that just allows you to capture sort of the ethos of the response. And we'll move into the next statement in about 20 seconds. I'll move into the second statement now, which is positively charged. Take a moment once more to try to come back to your baseline. It might not be perfect. Let's see if you can return close enough to it. As you receive the second statement, which is, I deserve to rest when my body needs it. I deserve to rest when my body needs it. Notice how your body responds. Notice what happened to the jaw, the breath, the chest. Notice if the temperature in the room changed, if you started perspirating or clenching. And then take the next minute to jot down your responses on your page. And we'll begin to move into the third statement. And so taking a moment to return to your resting posture, trying your best to connect back to that baseline feeling state. Which is basically like a reset. as we begin to move into the negatively charged statement, which is, my to-do list and work responsibilities come before my well-being. My to-do list and work responsibilities come before my well-being. So as that statement is rippling through your body, notice the response and jot down what you discover, what you feel. And then last but not least, we'll begin to move towards our fourth and final statement. And this one will be a neutral statement. And so returning to your resting posture of choice, taking a breath to reconnect with your baseline, to reset and let whatever response came before go. And the statement reads, I am open to rewriting my rest story. I am open to rewriting my rest story. Listen, let it land, notice, feel, and then jotting down what you discover, how you responded onto your page. Each time I do this practice, there's usually some grief that comes up. And so if you're noticing yourself feeling emotional, if perhaps you shed a couple tears or you felt something deep move through you, know that that is part of the subconscious part of you that wanted you to be here today. Those feelings are connected to the part of you that have really wanted to be seen and heard, and maybe haven't had an avenue to reach you for a little while or a long time. And so I encourage you to be gentle with yourself and to take the space and time you need to tend and care for your body and the emotions that came up. And I encourage you to not keep going with the workshop if what you most need right now is to just deepen into that feeling. But for the sake of time, I'm going to continue so that everyone here can get what they came for. But know that if we were in person, I would so be wanting to offer us all space to continue to sit with what arose. And so for those of you who would like to continue, on the screen, I now have on the screen a prompt for a reflection, as well as the 4 statements we just covered. And so I'm going to give us the next 5 minutes to fill out our worksheet, adding the statements into the second column. And then at the end of your worksheet, create another column. And in that column, you will write down your response to what does it reveal about your current relationship to rest? What do the sensations, emotions, and thoughts that you wrote down that were a response to each of those statements, what do they reveal about your current relationship to rest? And we're pausing here to reflect because this is where so much information and wisdom that are already baked into your body and your lived experience with rest live, but that have not had a forum to emerge or to reach us. And so maybe some of you felt this lack of alignment between your values and your needs and your actions or your behaviors come up. It might have been experienced as friction or conflict or tension or some sort of emotional response. And I want to normalize that that was the function of this practice. This is what it feels like when the old way of being and a new way of being that wants to emerge start to rub against each other. And those are the really rich and fertile places where we can dive deeper and inquire to really start to unravel the reasons why rest feels unsafe to us on an individual level. these really powerful reflections and shares in the chat. I just really want to thank everyone for their honesty and vulnerability. Yes, to Christy and Jamae, that's what this framework I hope will help you with, to translate what you're learning to what you need, to make the abstract journey of rewriting the rest story tangible and structured. Erin, I'm so grateful you're also here, being honest and sharing your story about how a near-death experience is what caused you to realize how drained you were. Thank you so much for sharing. I very much have a similar experience. Okay. And so we're going to take this reflection one layer deeper. And some of you are already kind of arriving at this, right? Okay. So now we have a sense based on these 4 statements we went through. We started to tease out a little bit what your body, what your subconscious actually believes about rest. And as you can see by the things that we're sharing here in the chat, you have a rest story. It might just be rest is possible only if all of these conditions are met. Rest is possible after I've taken care of everyone and everything else. Sort of a general theme I'm pulling on here. But for many of us, that is the dominant rest story. And so now that we've revealed some of what we truly believe, now the next step is to figure out how we can start to translate that. And for that, I'm offering a practice called Y times 5. We're not going to have time for you to go through this practice for every single one of those statements because I'm going to give us 5 minutes. And so you'll probably only have time to go through it with one statement. So as I just start to walk us through this practice, I invite you to start thinking about which statement you would like to do this for. It might help to start with a neutral one so you get accustomed to how this exercise works before you move maybe to one that you had more of a response to, but it's totally up to you. So the Y times 5 intent practice is to offer a systematic process for uncovering the roots of our subconscious rest story and understanding what's really going on. What do we really believe, right? So when you ask the question why 5 times in a row, you're essentially digging a deeper and deeper hole and hopefully getting to some sort of root, or if it's not the root, a direction that takes you towards the root. And again, part of this exercise is, yes, about what you put on paper, but the other part is also just about having the experience and noticing what happens when you pause and ask yourself why you believe what you believe, why 5 times. Usually it will reveal what isn't yours and what actually is. So this exercise is designed to just be added on to the chart that you already have. I realized I forgot to tell you to write it all the way on the far side. So if you don't have space to write 5 Y columns to your existing chart, that's okay. Just set up another chart like the one I have here on the screen. And essentially what you'll be doing is reviewing what you wrote in terms of sensations, emotions, and thoughts, reviewing what you wrote about what it revealed about your relationship to rest. Ask yourself why. So your why might mean, why do I feel this way? Referencing the column where you wrote what it revealed about your relationship to rest. Why do I feel this way? Why do I believe this to be true? Why is this my experience? These are just a couple of versions of why. There might be another why that you're more curious about. And so in the columns, let's say I'm doing row 1. For each of those columns, I'll just write my response to my why question. So it's like, why do I feel that rest has to come after everything else I do? I might write that in column B, and then I'll ask why to that response in column B, and just keep going. It's basically like a why tree. And so we'll take about, say 5, yeah, we'll do 5 minutes here for this exercise. So actually do 4, just for the interest of time. So until 7 minutes after. And again, let me know if you have any questions. Welcome to use the chat, raise your hand.
May this body be a bridge for the healing of this land. May the river flow through us, cleansing greed from our hands. May this body be a bridge from the water for the healing of this land. May the river flow through us, cleansing greed from our hands. May this body be a bridge from the water for the healing of this land. May the river flow through great mother, cleansing greed from our hands. To this land, we are born from the water. We are made from the land. Teach us, oh great mother. To bring peace to this land. May this body be a bridge for the healing of this land. May the river flow through us, cleansing greed from our hands.
Sometimes I wanna be alone. I cry myself yet to sleep. Yeah. Most nights I wanna be alone.
We'll have about 30 more seconds to complete.
Yeah. But it's
Maybe
okay
just
to
part
cry.
1 of your Y times 5
It's okay
exercise.
to feel lost inside, man. It's okay to cry.
All right. Yeah, again, I'll be sharing the replay as well as some guidance for this exercise in the follow-up email. But for now, I hope you had an experience with it so you can sort of see how the practice works. All right, so let's now begin to move into the framework. Why are we doing all of this? What is it all connecting to? How do I translate what I just discovered into something actionable, something tangible, something that I can start doing? So as a way to sort of summarize and synthesize our journey, remember, you have an irrevocable relationship with rest. You always have, you always will. Nothing and no one can take it away from you, even if you haven't rested for what feels like a lifetime. I hope you remember in your body that that relationship is so irrevocable that rest still wants to meet you. Your body still wants it, even if we haven't made the time. And you might have gotten in touch with some of that sensation, emotion, or thinking that really points to that relationship that's inseparable. Again, your need for rest is biological. You were born to need it. You were born to do it. But the cost of doing whatever it is that you had to do to survive, the hustling, the perfectionism, the caretaking, the self-sacrificing, the abandonment of needs, the doing too much, the overextending, the seeing everyone in your family and everyone at work do the same thing, all of that has made us forget this truth. We can move quickly, but it comes with a cost. Speed will always come at the cost of sensitivity. Just to give you a really practical example in your body, try sprinting down the street while trying to reflect on something really sensitive, or the way it works is your body just cannot, because in order to move quickly, you have to have high muscle tone, and high muscle tone means you can take impact, but you're more numb, you're more desensitized. And so think about this over the grand scheme of your whole life. That speed has always come at the cost of sensitivity. And if sensitivity is a way of attuning to ourselves and knowing ourselves, connecting to that inner world, right, which doesn't talk in English or any other language, but speaks in signals like sensations, emotions, and thoughts. When we're constantly busy, overwhelmed, overstimulated, and on the move, we are just less sensitized to our inner world. We miss out on the subtle communications the body and spirit are always trying to send to your mind. You are disconnected from 2 out of 3 of your innate forms of intelligence. Remember, we talked about the mind as cognition and intellect, the body as the second one, and the spirit or soul. And the body's form of intelligence comes through feeling and sensing. Spirit and soul is that part of you that's always knows and is always connected to what it most wants and needs. And by being disconnected from 2 out of 3 forms of intelligence, 66% of you are effectively disabled in your decision-making. I'm going to say that again. When we are disconnected from 2 out of 3 of our innate forms of intelligence, we are effectively disabled in our decision-making. And you can be effectively disabled without necessarily having the identity of being disabled, because disabled as a word really references how a certain condition or system or structure that we're living in prevents us from being able to do something the way we need to. And as you can imagine, when we're disabled in our decision-making, it makes us much more likely to look for answers outside of ourselves. It makes us easier to exploit, to manipulate, to be ruled by fear. It makes it easier for us to forget that other people might have different relationships to their body. And I say that because I'm sure at some period in time, all of us actually were on the hustle culture train. I know I was for a long time. And I know that I used to be hostile to rest, not just to myself, but to others who are relating to me, just because that was the culture I was practicing within myself and in all of my relationships. And so the work of rewriting our rest stories is about discovering how and why we forgot in the first place, right? You got to know your starting place if you want to change it. And discovering who you need to surround yourself with so that you never have to forget again. And notice that I'm not saying here that everyone should quit their job and go on a sabbatical and just hide in a cave until systemic oppression is fixed. I'm saying we can do this work to understand why and how we forgot in the first place. We can be around people who love and care for us and affirm our humanity so that we don't have to act like we forgot this truth around them. And if we can just create that, even if it's just one little corner of our lives, even if it's just a couple of relationships, we can really start to rewrite that rest story. And all you need is one person, ideally more than one, but like at least one person you can just be in the process of questioning with. All of this really is about creating space to question, feel, and discover what you actually believe about rest. Not what society told you, not what your parents told you, not what anyone who was afraid that you wouldn't survive or succeed if you didn't work yourself to the bone has told you. What you actually believe, so that you can make choices from that place, and hopefully with all 3 of your innate forms of intelligence on board and online, informing you and supporting you. So this takes me to our framework for today. This is the framework that I have been conceiving and testing and iterating and building and it's the framework I used for my own rest journey. It's one that I have now led 22 Asian women and femmes through in the Rewriting Our Rest Stories program. And now I want to make it freely available to anyone, honestly, who will listen, because it's going to take so many more of us than just the couple of people who enroll in my group program to really change this tide and to create a world where more of us feel like we can be out in the open with our rest journey. And so just doing a quick check on time, I'll aim to complete this framework with some room for questions. And it's not too complicated, so I think I can do it. Okay. So really, this framework and everything, all the practices we've done, which are part of this framework, all of it's really designed to help you interrupt the supremacy of the status quo, to intervene with your default way of being so that you can question and feel and see if you really believe it, and to normalize with a structure that you can follow, making space to feel and connect with your inner world. And so this framework is 2 concentric circles interconnected, which is on purpose to really amplify that there is no way we're going to self-care ourselves out of burnout and exhaustion and massive levels of human-generated suffering. We're going to need to community care out of this. But community care always includes our self-work and our self-care. So the outer ring in green, this is the community structure that we need in order to rewrite our rest stories. This is the environment and the people and the culture and the stories of that culture that we are immersed in. If anyone's familiar with that fish inside of a fishbowl sort of analogy for understanding how systemic oppression works, I believe the quote is like, culture is like the water. You're just swimming in it, breathing in it. You don't even see it. It just is. And so in order to combat that, because we live in a rest hostile world, we have access to rest hostile culture, rest hostile people, rest hostile spaces. I think most of us would say our employer or our relationship to work is maybe a number one reason why we feel we cannot rest. And there's a lot of rest hostile stories and narratives out there. So we need to cultivate our own community structures where a rest affirming culture, community stories can be practiced. And then within that community structure is the self structure. So these are things that you can do to create structure within your individual personal life to rewrite the rest story, as you also put your individual self into a communal structure. So within the self structure, there are 3 things that we'll dig into: physical disruptions of the norm, a way to visualize the invisible, and a daily practice of checking in. So we'll double click into the self structure first. Physical disruptions, things that you see every day or almost every day in your life that will literally remind you of your commitment to rest. Some of these things, some of you are already familiar with if you've come to the collective rest community rest sessions, like the rest nest. But instead of just setting it up for guided practices, I invite you to create a permanent little rest nest inside of your home. This could be a little nook, a cozy corner, maybe just a part of your bedroom. Maybe it's close to like your altar or any other space you have for connecting with yourself or connecting with your spirituality. But whatever it is, set up a space that can embody your intention for rest, so that every time you walk by it, you are reminded literally of this intention, maybe even of this masterclass, maybe of the conversations we had today. Maybe it'll even remind you that you didn't do your somatic check-in yet. But a physical thing that you will walk by, hopefully daily, in your home. A second physical disruption that I really recommend is one that can live right on your calendar or schedule or planner, whatever you use. Start to schedule transition time onto your calendar. You're a human, not a machine. You're not actually designed to be booked and busy back to back to back to back to back to back. And the creation of calendars with little time blocks that are empty tend to motivate us to want to fill emptiness. That's a very human thing. We don't like void and empty spaces, so we want to fill it up. But consider, even if you want to just do this for like 2 weeks just to try it out, no more being booked back to back. After each event in your calendar, can you schedule at least 5 minutes transition time? And if you have to use an excuse like, hey, manager or boss person, I need 5 minutes to go to the bathroom. Is it okay if we start this meeting 5 minutes later? That's an example that most people are not going to say no to. And obviously this might not always be possible, but I really encourage you to question yourself, especially if you start to feel defensive about why you cannot put a break somewhere. Just ask yourself, why do I feel like I can't? And you can even do the why times 5 with that. Second, visualize the invisible. Why times 5 is a perfect practice for you to keep in your back pocket for this. The example I just shared, if you notice resistance to setting transitional times on your calendar, ask yourself why and dig into it. But also you can use it anytime you catch yourself in a rest hostile thought pattern, which is usually going to be a survival strategy, a coping mechanism, an old story that allowed us to survive, but is actually literally now preventing us from resting and taking care of ourselves. So use it to investigate and see if the action you're called to take is actually one that you want to take. And thirdly, a daily practice of checking in. This is where your somatic check-in is going to reward you with so much wisdom if you commit to it. So I would encourage you to commit the practice daily. What you could do is set up a recurring invite on your calendar every weekday at minimum, because that's usually when we have the most conditions on our rest. Set a recurring invite, and that's going to be the time that you do your somatic check-in. So you'll do the practice based on what you discover about yourself. You'll try to meet the need in some way, do some sort of restful action. Maybe that even looks like removing something from your schedule that's causing stress, and then completing the after portion. And again, every week at the end of the week, making a practice of reflecting on all those entries from the week, reviewing them, and writing down a couple of insights that you discovered. Very much like you're doing a report or a longitudinal study, just want to notice and keep track. And it's also going to reward you with all the little nuggets of progress that you're making that you might miss when you don't reflect. Again, speed comes at the cost of sensitivity. A big part of rewriting our rest stories is taking the moments to savor when we do learn something that unlocks more on the rest journey. And part of it is also just allowing ourselves to prioritize reflection again. It's something that gets really relegated to the shadows and pushed away as a nice to have in our society. And so these are a couple of examples of what you can do for your everyday self-structure. And now let's dig into the community structure. Access to rest-affirming culture. And culture, again, is what is practiced, valued, or upheld by the people around you or the spaces that you occupy. One thing that you can start to do is consume rest-affirming content. Again, our default world, the world that we currently live in now, is very rest hostile or very committed to the erasure, the cultural erasure of rest at all, which is why all of us forgot and why all of us are here, I would imagine. But this is where it could look like consuming podcasts, books, articles, YouTube videos, content creators who are on the rest journey. At the Nat Ministry on Instagram is a great start. She's been on a lot of podcast episodes. In her link in bio, she will have access to blogs and interviews and articles that she's been in. The Nat Ministry, Trisha Hersey also wrote a book, Rest is Resistance, that came out last fall that I want to uplift. Highly recommended. Might even say it's required reading for the rest journey. And she also released this rest deck. Where is my screen? Can I see if I'm sharing it? Which, let me see it, came out to accompany the book. And I actually pulled a card for us that I will read towards the end. That's also a fun way to be connected to a rest-affirming culture. Community. Are there rest-affirming communities you can join? They might not be direct. They might not be directly like, we're a community about rest, but it could be rest adjacent. Like we're a community about hobbies. We're a community about connection. We're a community about going out in nature. Are there rest affirming hobbies? Maybe it's gardening, maybe it's arts and crafts, maybe it's swimming that you can participate in. Are there rest affirming spaces? I always think about libraries, parks, tea houses, botanical gardens that you can spend more time in. And stories. And this is one where I really encourage each of us to think about the people we are closest to and have immediate access right now in our lives. And to think about if there's anyone that we feel close to who just might share some of the sentiments that we shared here with each other today. Do you know any tired as fuck people who are down to get vulnerable about burnout, the cost of survival, and rest? And maybe you don't know if people are down to get vulnerable, but are you willing to perhaps initiate the conversation, to invite them into the questioning with you? Again, it's not about you having all the answers. It's about you tapping your friend on the shoulder and being like, hey, are you tired of this shit? Okay, me too. Do you want to talk about it? That's the kind of energy I'm talking about. And maybe thinking about who in your life you can share the rest journey with, right? I am almost 100% positive we all have burned out, tired, depleted, exhausted, holy shit, something's got to give people in our life. The issue is because rest is so stigmatized because of this collective forgetting that benefits systemic oppression, namely capitalism and ableism, people no longer feel safe admitting how tired they are. And also, I will say the pandemic kind of changed that. And so we're at a really ripe and opportune time for opening up these cans of worms that these systems do not want us opening up. And so with this framework, you have a roadmap now that you can use to set up structures that can hold and support your intention for rest. But remember, you cannot do this alone. You absolutely need community, other people. This framework is not designed to be dissected or taken apart. It must work together in tandem. And while it will take time, effort, and commitment, while it will require compassion, forgiveness, and trust, while it will feel equally confronting, uncomfortable, and liberating, know that it is 100% feasible. I know it because I've gone through it. I have supported 22 other people in my group programming going through it. This is the invisible framework that you might not have been aware of, that is sort of the backbone, the skeleton of the entire collective rest body of work. This is why we don't do individual rest. This is why it's called collective rest. And I want to give you this framework because you absolutely do not need me to rewrite your rest story. It will take some work though, because we might not all have access to rest affirming cultures or communities or people and stories that we can immediately jump to. That might be the labor that you have to do to be able to procure that. But you can at least start with the self-structure. And it's now at this point in time that I just want to briefly mention to any of the tired Asian and Pacific Islander women and femmes in the room who are ready to break intergenerational cycles through rest. If you don't want to do this by yourself, which fair point. I tried not to make the framework look like a lot of work, but it is labor. I want to be honest about that, but it's labor in service of our freedom. If you don't want to set that up for yourself, or you don't have people who you can drop into community with, if you really, really need support to navigate whatever chapter of transition you're in right now, maybe it's your disillusionment with capitalism, maybe it's deep burnout, maybe you're finally taking a sabbatical, maybe you're taking a mental health leave from work, whatever it is. If you're an Asian woman who does not want to set up your own structure, I want to invite you to consider joining Rewriting Our Rest Stories, my 4-month group program that will offer you, it's like baked in, the structure, support, and community you need to make the change. What I'm so proud of is that this program is really designed to offer you a village of support, because that's what every human being needs. But when you're joining, you're not just joining a group program, you're also joining the Resties Village. When you graduate, you'll become part of our alumni who call themselves the Resties. And we have ongoing quarterly alumni meetups. The alumni and I are currently exploring doing a Rewriting Our Rest Stories retreat next year that will just be for alumni. And so you're joining almost like a friend group, an ongoing community that will be resting together. And that comes totally free. It's just as part of being a graduate of Roars. And a lot of what we do in the program is very much what we've been doing here today. Direct experiences with rest that connect you to your body, sharing our reflections, connecting with other people who are deeply tired, and bringing a lot of awareness to what's been normalized so that we can stop gaslighting ourselves out of rest. So all this information will be coming up in the follow-up email, but enrollment is now open. Enrollment will close on August 31st. There are payment plans, there's financial aid, an alumna generously donated for the second time, so that we have financial aid to give away. And so if any of this resonates, if you enjoyed your time today, look out for that email, check out the website for more info, and I would love to connect with you in a 30-minute connection call where we can dive a little deeper into your experience and see how Roars can support you. All right. Some other ways for folks in the room who maybe don't resonate with the program or don't identify as a tired Asian Pacific Islander woman or femme, know that there's a lot of ways to continue to work with me. I want to, I think, uplift the most the community rest sessions, which are on pause for this month so that I could focus on this free masterclass for the community, but we'll be coming back in September. If you don't want to wait for the next community rest session though, and you just want to learn how to rest, I encourage you to check out my Patreon, where I have exclusive audio only recordings of past collective rest practices so that you can start practicing from your phone at home, wherever you are. It could be a nice way to incorporate something restful in your somatic check-in. You might do the somatic check-in, a collective rest practice on Patreon, and then completing the after part of your check-in. And if you have an employer, an organization that you know has budget for bringing in outside facilitators, and you know this organization or your company could really benefit from a conversation about rest in the workplace, know that I also bring collective rest experiences to organizations. It's one of my favorite things to do, to support the people in the company and shaking the culture up and helping people find rest affirming community within their colleagues. Basically is my way of Trojan horsing this message into the workplace. So that's another way to spread the rest gospel. All right. And the last thing I'll close out with is this quote that I think it's a quote that I have continued to sit with. And it really is the quote that became the North Star for the framework I shared with you today. I made some edits, which is why you see the word Zen crossed out. But this quote is by Joachim Ernst Berendt from a powerful book called The World is Sound, Music and the Landscape of Consciousness. And this quote reads, "Experience and belief confront each other. Rest," I replaced it with rest. It's a quote about Zen, but same thing. I'm going to say rest is not about the things that you can or cannot believe in. Rest is about things one experiences. And the things you have experienced, you know, period. That is why the word belief plays no role in rest text, which I guess this workshop is a rest text. So to bring it all the way back to the beginning of the session, I don't want you to believe anything I say. I don't want you to believe anything anyone else has to say about you, your rest journey, and what's possible for you when you rest. I want you to believe what the fuck you believe, what the fuck you've experienced, what you know to be true for yourself, because that is irrevocable. And again, remember your relationship to rest is already irrevocable. And now it's about reclaiming it, remembering it, and living from the embodiment of that truth, that nothing and no one can take this away from you. And so with that, just really want to say thank you to you all for being here today. I just noticed that I went a couple minutes over, but I'm going to just pause and see if there are any questions from the community. I'm sorry I have not had a chance to catch up with the chat, but I'm going to take a moment to stop my screen, and I'm happy to stay for like 10 minutes of questions if anybody has any. Or any thoughts, reflections. And if you feel complete, you're totally welcome to go too. I'll just hang out for a second for any questions. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for sharing your energy. We definitely will be sending out resources and the replay later this week. Oh, let's see. Yes, I'm just seeing Betty or Mike's comment about who tired as fuck friend. Down to be someone's tired as fuck vulnerable buddy. Yes, I hope people got to share information. If not, one of the things I'm cooking on is like a resty bestie sort of anti-networking event where we get to form relationships with people who want to be our rest buddies. So more to come there. I'm going to continue noodling on it. I'm glad people connected. Kendra, yes, I will be sharing the slide deck. Let's see. Erin, yes, cost of the upcoming program. Sorry, I didn't have time to go into that. The full program is 2,500, which is payable via 4 to 6 months interest-free payment plans. And if financial aid is something that you'd like to be considered for, you can schedule a connection call, and then if we both feel like it's a good fit, I'll send you the link to apply. And then funds will be distributed with the intention of enrolling or allowing for the most access to be created. So there's that. All right. Yes, anti-networking. Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, I just want to thank you all for being here, for being on this journey with me. I hope that something from this session was supportive, and I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday for our Rest Story Circle. Going back to that community structure piece, that's going to be a really beautiful way to drop into a rest affirming culture with rest affirming community and rest affirming stories. So come and get drenched in rest affirmations with us. Join from bed, join from your backyard, join from the beach, join in any way that makes you feel comfortable. I'm really excited for that. And thank you so much again for being here. Right. Take care, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of your night.